Hello friends, in this video we'll talk about the installation of the customized PostgreSQL server from a source code. And in this installation we will apply the new technique for encryption, which is called the data at rest encryption, which will enable us to encrypt the entire cluster of databases. So let's have a look about this installation. Now, usually when you do an installation of the PostgreSQL server from a pre-compiled package, you will use the package manager, and this package manager will handle the entire process of installation until the end of it, when it will create for you a default user and a default database. When we do the installation from a source code, we won't have this package manager, therefore we have to care for the configuration, set up the configuration of the entire process of the installation. Same as with the update of the package if there is any updates in the future, and same with the removal of the PostgreSQL server. If we have to remove it, we have to do it manually. So everything we have to care for manually. Now, what is data at rest encryption, which is called also full PostgreSQL instance encryption? Now, the cluster in these databases will be saved securely on disk in encrypted format, and when we want to decrypt blocks, we just decrypt some blocks of it and then we return it back to the cluster. And this has two benefits. The first thing is that we will encrypt the entire cluster of databases using the data at rest encryption, except for two things: the pgstat and the temporary buffers. Now remember, in the pre-compiled package we were unable to encrypt the entire databases, the entire cluster. When we use the pgcrypto package, we were able to encrypt only few columns of each database. We were not able to encrypt or decrypt the entire cluster of databases. Here, with the data at rest encryption, we are able to encrypt the entire cluster of databases, encrypt and decrypt. This is the first benefit. The second benefit is that when you need to process any data which is saved in this cluster, you don't have to decrypt the entire cluster. You just look where this data available, in which block. You take out this block, decrypt it, process the data, make any changes you wish, and then you return back this block of data to the cluster, and it will be encrypted automatically. Now obviously this is a very convenient way to handle the encryption of the database. So having said that, let's start the installation process. The first thing we need to do is that we need to check our update of the packages available on our server machine. Now remember, we are doing this process on the server machine. Okay, we completed updating the packages in our server machine. The second step is that we need to add few packages to our system. Now, why do we need to add these packages? Now, as you can see here, we have to add these packages as well as with these. Now, when you do the installation with the package manager, the package manager will handle all the installation of whichever package, whichever tools you need. But when we do the installation from a source code, as I have said here, that we need to handle the configuration by ourselves. Therefore we need to add these packages by ourselves. So, and I will tell you what these packages are doing. So let's add this first line of packages. Let's clear this. Now these packages contains tools which are useful to compile and build the PostgreSQL server. For instance, this build essential package. This build essential package contains some important packages such as the GCC compiler. The GCC compiler will compile the C language code. It contains also the make tool. The make tool that we will use later on here when we do the installation process. other tools like what we have here in PostgreSQL client command package, we can find in it this PSQL the PSQL tool. So these packages contain tools that is useful to build and compile and build the PostgreSQL server. Now I have already done this, so let's move on to the next packages that we need to install, which is these two packages. Now this package will add for you the package name pgcrypto, which is responsible for the encryption, and this package PostgreSQL common, this will have we will use it later on when we need to know the version of the PostgreSQL that we will install. Okay, I have already installed it. Very well, then let's clear again. Now we have installed whichever packages that we need. Remember, if you don't install these packages later on, when you finish the installation and you start the PostgreSQL server, you will get errors prompting you to install these packages or that packages. So I have done this from the beginning to avoid getting these errors later on. Now I will do the installation with two ways, with option 1 and option 2. In option 1, I will make the installation using a customized PostgreSQL package source code using a sudo user on current user, and then next option is that I will use the customized PostgreSQL using a root user on a new user. So in this video I will talk about the first option, the installation with the first option, and in the next video I will show you what are the differences when we use the root user. Now for those of you who don't know what is the user, sudo user, what is root user, how we add user to a server, because each and every server can work with multiple users at the same time. So for those of you who are wondering what is the users, they can go back to my previous course, the PostgreSQL database and SSL certificates. In that course I have explained everything about the users of a server. So let's start in this video doing this first option, the installation with the first option. Now obviously the first thing we need to do is that we need to install the package, the customized package source code from this link, which is this one. And you go to this link, you press on it, click on it, then you start the download, which will give you this zip file. Then you unzip it and then untar it, and then you will get this folder. In this folder contains the entire source code of the customized PostgreSQL server, and we will do the work on this folder later on. Now, having downloaded this customized source code, we need to start the installation process. But I want to prompt you to about one error that you will face when you reach to this step, the sudo make. In this step, it will gives you an error saying that there is a conflict in one of the files names. In one of the files names available in this package, there is some conflict. So I will tell you and I will show you how you can correct this file name so you can avoid getting this error when you start the installation process. And the way to do that is that you go to the package, source, binary, pgrewind, and you go to this file. Now this file by default is protected, so you need to change the mode of it to 777 so you can work on it, and you can change the mode using the terminal. Now after you changing the mode of it, so you can do the changes on it, you will see this thing. By default this is this name. This name is giving you the error when you start the installation. So what you need to do is that you add this word before it. Just add this rewind underscore. That's it. And you can do this in the 4 places available for this file here. 1, and this is the 2nd place, and the 3rd place, and the 4th place in here. Now once you have done this, you save the file and then you change the mode of it again back to 700 to protect it. Once you have done this, you are good to go for the start of the installation, which we will start now. So we will change the directory to the package. The next thing is that we need to configure this package. Now for those of you who watched my previous course, in the previous course I have made the installation of this PostgreSQL server without the option of the OpenSSL. Means I have just made the PostgreSQL server encrypted, but I didn't give it the option to use the SSL connection, to use the SSL properties to connect between the server and the client. Now in this course I'll show you how you can give this PostgreSQL server the ability to connect securely between the server and the client using this flag with OpenSSL. Now let's start the configuration. Okay, the configure have been done. The next step is that we need to make now usually it is sudo make. This word, the world, will make for you the documentation of the PostgreSQL. If you don't want it, you can, if you don't want the documentation, you can omit this, you can delete it, and you just do sudo make. That will be enough. In my case, I'm also downloading the documentation. Okay, if it's successful, you will get PostgreSQL contrib and documentation successfully made, ready to install. Now the next step we go to it is to install. Again, this word will install also the documentation. If you don't want it, you can just delete it, omit it. Installation complete. If you see this, that means your installation have been completed, and to make sure to check about that, you need to find these 4 directories. If you find these 5 directories, that means your installation have been completed. Now remember, when you do the installation, by default the installation will create for you a directory by the name of PGSQL. In this PGSQL, the entire PostgreSQL server will be reside in this directory. So this installation will create this directory where all the files of the PostgreSQL server will reside in this directory. Now if you see these 4 directories in this one, that means your installation is complete. So let's see if we do have these directories. Okay, ls-lh. Okay, we have the binary, the include, the library, and the share, which means that our installation is correct and done. Notice that these directories are all owned by the root. So far it is owned by the root. Okay, now let's move on to the next step. which is an important step. When you do the on a server machine, when you work on a server machine, as you know, the server could have multiple users working on it. Each user of this server should have his own cluster of database, and these clusters should not conflict with each others. So each user should have his own cluster of databases and is not connected to other users. There should be total separation, and for that we need to create a directory for each user, so we can place the cluster of databases of that user in this directory. Now, by convention they call it the data directory. It's up to you to call it whichever name suitable for you. So we need to make this directory, and this directory will belong to this user only. If you have another user, you have to create another directory and another cluster for that user. Okay, directory have been created. Now we need to change the owner of this directory. We have to make the owner of each cluster of databases owned by one single user only. So that's essential, so you can prevent the conflict between users and their data. Now in my case, I'm changing the username to smadmin, which is this user, which is this sudo user. So this sudo user, this current user on the server, will be the owner of this cluster of databases which resides in this directory. Okay, we have changed the ownership. Now we need to initialize the database and in that cluster. We use the binary and the initdb command, and we will initialize it on the cluster of databases of that user. Okay, now success. You can start the database server using this line of commands. Okay, now the next step, these two steps, actually it's not part of the installation process. It is something, in my opinion, we have to do it first so we can use it later when we start using the server. And this thing is concerning the creation of a directory by the name of pglog, or any name you wish, and in this directory we will save all the files, the log files of the database. Now any process happen in the server and the databases will be logged in a file. Now these files usually saved in one directory, so we need to create this directory so we can, at the beginning, so we can use it later on when we start using the log files. So I'm making this directory by the name of pglog. You can give it any name you wish, and remember to place it in the data directory of that user. Data created, and now we need to change the mode of this directory, of the log files directory. Changed. Now I can show you one thing. Now when you start you need to create this also in the server configuration file, which is the postgresql.conf file, and let me show it to you by the way in here. So sudo nano user local pgsql data postgresql.conf. Now this is the server configuration file. Any configuration about the server should be done in this file, and this file resides in the data directory. Okay, now we're talking about creating this directory, the log file directory, and if you go down, scroll down all the way to almost the bottom, okay, you will see here error reporting and logging. You come to this section, and then this section is responsible for the configuration of the log files, including the directory of it, of course. Now, so you uncomment this, you go down, log collector, you make it on, then the next thing is here you need to uncheck it so you can create the directory. By the way, the name, it's up to you, totally up to you, but whatever name in here, it should be the same name that you make it in here. So it should be the same name here and here. And this file name, you can keep it as it is here. This is the log file, which contains three things: the year and the month and the day. So every log file will be created according to the date of it. And remember, when you start the server, you need to mention the entire location of this directory and this file, and you give this file name exactly as it is in here. So you see, this name is exactly mentioned in here, should be the same in this directory, the pglog, which we have created. You can, I will make all these things now. You can read them and see whichever one suitable for your case. It's not necessary you can do them all, but you need to read what every thing can do, and you can select whichever suitable for you. Now, having done that, we are ready. Control X, yes. Now, since we have made these changes, we need to reload them so the configuration, the new configuration, can take place. Now we need to start the server, and to start the server we have to use the pg control, and we will start this cluster of databases using the L command, and we need to mention the directory and the file of the log files, which is here, and then we need to finally mention the start command, which will start our server. Okay, now server starting. Now our server is up and running. The next step is that we need to do the logging. Okay, logging is done. The next step is that we can create a database using the command create db, and then we can connect it using the PSQL tool. So to create db, you can give it any name. So user local PGSQL binary create db, give it any name you wish. Created. Now we need to connect it. User local PGSQL binary PSQL test. Now we are connected to the database that we have just created it. We can see what available in this cluster of databases. Now these are the databases that are available. Actually these are the templates, but these two are the databases. The Postgres, this is the default database, and the test database which we have just created right now. Now notice that all this cluster is owned by this user, the current user, by this user, the sudo user. Now when you do the installation from a precompiled package and you reach to this stage, you will notice that this default database is owned actually by the default user. The Postgres is not owned by the current user. So this is one of the differences when you do a precompiled package installation and a customized installation from a source code. Now let's disconnect from the database. The next step is the final step in our installation process. Once we complete this final step, then our installation is complete. The next step is this one. And what is this step? So let's see what is this step. Now whenever you install a program on your server machine, you need to tell this server system that there is a new program, and this program has a new shared libraries, because the system should know about these shared libraries. If you don't do this step, when you start a PostgreSQL server, you will get an error saying error while loading shared libraries. If you get this error, you need to know that you have missed doing this step. So you need to do it, and it is the last step of the installation. Now we are good and we are done. Now we have a PostgreSQL server cluster of databases that is fully encrypted, and it is up and running, and we can start creating any databases, any columns in this cluster of databases. Now if you need to know what is the version of your installed PostgreSQL, you just do pgconfig version, and you can see that the version is 10.6. Now we have reached to here. As I said, we have a fully encrypted PostgreSQL cluster of databases, and in this installation have been done based on the current user, using the sudo user on the current user. Now in the next video I will show you how you can do this on a root user. Remember, I told you in the previous course that you should avoid at all times using the root user. The root user is very dangerous account, and if any mistakes handling this root account could destroy your entire databases cluster. So why we will do this on a root user if it is very dangerous? For some of you, for whichever reason they want to know how to do it with the root user, I will just show them how they can do it with the root user, the installation based on a root user. But again, I highly recommend and advise you not to approach and use at all the root user account. Thank you very much.